Welcome to Board Game Review with Jason. This is a video podcast where I take a board game, show you how to play it, give you my personal review, and then give you some decision points so you can decide if it's a game you would like to check out. In this episode we're looking at 1960, The Making of the President. It's a game designed by Christian Leonard and Jason Matthews and published by Z-Man Games. It's for 2 players only, ages 12 and up, and it'll take you about 2 hours to play. Thematically, this game falls into the political genre. As a player, you're taking on the role of Richard Nixon or John F. Kennedy in the campaign leading up to the 1960 United States election. Mechanically, it's a card-driven game. You're going to have a hand of cards, and you're going to play those cards in various ways to campaign in all 50 states. Each state has a number of electoral votes, and at the end of the game, you're just going to total up the number of electoral votes for the states that you control. The person with the highest total wins the game. So there's a mechanic of card hand management there. It's a card-driven game, and it's also an area control game because you're trying to control the key states. So let's get right into it and open up this box and see what's inside. So here's what you get with the game. You get a nice large map board of the United States, which is separated into 4 regions: the East, the South, the Midwest, and the West. Each region has its own color and separated from each other with this thick black border. Along the top of the board you have the red theme for Nixon. You have a coffee mug, which is something called a rest area, and then you have a campaign strategy book, which is where you'll play cards throughout the game for 2 special turns in the game: the debates and election day. Along the bottom of the game board you have the blue theme for Kennedy, his rest area, and his campaign strategy book. At the top of the map board you have 3 spaces where you'll play cards with special events on them, such as prevention events, debate events, and election day events. Each state has a box with the state name, state abbreviation, and number of electoral votes. The color of the banner in each state box is important because it signifies which candidate that state is likely to give support to. And in some of the states, in the lower right hand corner, you have an icon either of a red elephant or a blue donkey. This is used during setup. Each region also has spaces for endorsement markers and advertising markers. In the lower left-hand corner of the map board you have the turn track and the phase track. These tracks will drive the game's flow of play. So the game consists of these turns. You have 5 normal turns, then a debate turn, then 2 more normal turns, and then an election day special turn. The game comes with 2 wooden cubes that you use to track which turn and phase you're in. In the normal turns, 1 through 5, 7, and 8, each one is made up of 5 phases, a momentum phase, and then a campaign strategy and rest phase. So you'll move the cubes like this. You'll be in turn 1, phase 1, then you move to turn 1, phase 2, so on up to phase 5. Then you'll have a momentum phase, a campaign strategy and rest phase. And then you'll reset the phase track to 1 and move into turn 2. So you'll repeat these phases for turns 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then you'll move into the debate turn. The debate turn has its own special phases, and then you'll go into turns 7 and 8, which are normal turns, so you go through the phase track for those turns, and then you have the final turn, which is election day. Election day has its own unique phases, so you won't go through these phases for election day. Along the right side of the board is the issues track, where these are the 3 issues that you'll be debating over during the game: defense, economy, and civil rights. There's an initial priority to these issues, but those priorities can change throughout the game, and that will be important. Another thing that will be important is that you'll be able to gain and lose support in these issues throughout the game. So here are the other components you get with the game. You get a debate board, which is only used during the special debate turn of the game. You get a stack of momentum markers. They're double-sided. On one side is blue for Kennedy, red for Nixon. And when you get one of these momentum markers, you'll just turn it face up based on which candidate you're playing as. You also get endorsement markers. Again, they're double-sided, blue for Kennedy, red for Nixon. Then there are the 3 issue tiles, which will be placed on the issues track and moved around as the priorities shift: economy, defense, and civil rights. And then you get the pieces that are specific to each player. You get a candidate card, you get a candidate token that will move around the board to show where you're currently campaigning. You get a number of these cubes in your color: blue for Kennedy, red for Nixon. They will be used for a number of things, such as marking support in the states, marking support on issues as you fight over the issues, and marking support in advertising in the various regions. And then you get the 50 state seals. There's one for each state. On one side is the state seal, and on the other side is the name of the state abbreviation, and number of electoral votes. Then you get the main deck of playing cards. There are various types of these. We'll take a closer look at these in just a minute. Then you get a deck of cards for endorsements. So throughout the game you'll have the opportunity to gain endorsements in the various regions, and you'll draw from this deck of cards to see which region you get an endorsement in. Then there's the political capital bag. This is just a cloth bag where these cubes will go into, and you'll draw out of this bag during the game for various things. For instance, to determine who goes first, or when you're campaigning in a state where your opponent has a lot of influence, you'll draw from this bag for what's known as support checks. You'll start the game with an equal number of cubes in here for Nixon and Kennedy, but as the game progresses and you start drawing cubes out of this bag, the political capital will shift towards one or the other candidate. So the likelihood of drawing a blue cube for Kennedy may be more or less depending on how many cubes have been drawn before. And finally you get the rule book. The rule book is very well done. It's very well organized. It's very colorful, has a lot of pictures and examples. And then what's really useful is on the back you have a nice reference sheet or player aid that outlines all of the things you can do in the game, the flow of play of the game, the special rules for debates and election day. This is very helpful, and it's nice to leave this out during the game so you can remind yourself of what you can do and the flow of play. So let's take a closer look at the cards that will come into play throughout the game and what they look like. At the top of every card is a card title. This just gives you the name of the person or description of the event that the card represents. Then you have a number of campaign points. This represents the strength of the card, or how many points you can play the card for. Then you have the number of rest cubes you gain when you play the card. Then you have a little bit of history giving you the background of the person or event the card represents. And then you have a description of what happens in the game if you play this card as an event. When you play these cards, you can either play them for the campaign points or the event, but not both. And we'll talk more about that later. But this text right here just tells you what happens on the game board if you play it as an event. And then in the lower left-hand corner you have 2 icons. The first icon is one of the issues that you're debating over in the game. For example, in this case we have civil rights. And then the second icon is either the red elephant for Nixon or the blue donkey for Kennedy. These 2 icons are mainly going to come into play during the special debate turn, but the second icon is important because it tells you which candidate the event is going to favor. So the red elephant for Nixon, this event is going to favor Nixon, whereas the blue donkey for Kennedy, this event is going to favor Kennedy. So these 2 cards right here are representative of the majority of the cards in the game, but then you have 3 special types of cards that can come up during the game. You have prevention events. You're going to get some benefits immediately, but then it's going to also be special in that it prevents certain other events from being played. Then you have the debate events. This event's not going to take effect immediately, but will be played at the top of the map board in the special space, and this event will occur on the special debate turn. And finally, you have Election Day event special cards. When you play this card as an event, the event will not happen immediately, but will be placed aside to be invoked on Election Day. And finally, in the lower right-hand corner, you have a state abbreviation. This will come into play at the very end of the game on the special Election Day turn, and we'll talk more about that later. Another important thing to notice about the cards is that the sum of the campaign points and rest cubes always add up to 4. The campaign points represents how powerful the card is. So a 3 campaign point card is more powerful than a 2 campaign point card. But if you play the more powerful campaign point card, you're going to gain fewer rest cubes. And we'll see the importance of rest cubes a little bit later. So the first thing you're going to do to set the game up for play is to place each of the state seals face up in their corresponding states. So this seal is for Michigan, so I'll put it in Michigan, and I'll just do that for each of the state seals. Then you're going to place the appropriate number of state support cubes in each state as indicated by the candidate icons. Each icon represents 1 cube of support. So for instance, in Arkansas I see 1 donkey, so I'm going to put 1 blue Kennedy state support in Arkansas. There's 2 in Mississippi, so I'll put 2 blue cubes there. There's 2 red elephants in Kansas, so I'll put 2 red state support cubes there for Nixon, and just continue for the other states that have these candidate icons in the lower right hand corner. Next, you're going to place the candidate tokens in their home states where they'll start the game out. Kennedy starts out in Massachusetts, and Nixon starts out in California. Next, you're going to place the issue tiles in their respective starting priority positions on the issue track. To start the game out, defense starts at priority 1, economy starts at priority 2, and civil rights at priority 3. Next, you're going to place the turn and phase markers on the turn and phase track, both on number 1. Then each player is going to take their candidate card, their supply of cubes, and 2 momentum markers. So 2 momentum markers for Kennedy and 2 momentum markers for Nixon. Then you're going to seed the political capital bag with 10 cubes from each player. So 10 blue cubes go in the political capital bag and 10 red cubes. Then you're going to shuffle the campaign card deck and place it next to the game board. Then you're going to shuffle the endorsements card deck and place it next to the game board with the endorsement markers next to them. And finally, you're going to set the debate board aside for now. Like I said, it's not going to come into play until the special debate turn. So now the game is set up, let's see how you play.